Hello there. In this video, I thought I would do something which I haven't done before, which is use at the races a bit and a bit of GG's and their sectional times and their sectional time results and some of their graphs and charts. This is obviously these particular results are free to access. Within at the races. I haven't really ever used sectional times that much. There's kind of two parts, I think, in my mind. I should say overall. Um, I've got plenty of learning to do myself. Matt on Gigi's has written a few introductory things which I need to kind of re-immerse in. And I've read a few things on ATR over time and various different articles. I suppose there's two sides to a point. There's one I'm going to use, which is, I mean, this video is for the kind of Tracker Tuesday post, which is a day late as I'm recording it on a Wednesday, but using those kind of results to help highlight eye catchers and horses who may have performed okay or underperformed or maybe never had a chance given how the race panned out. And I'll talk through some examples from Newcastle on Monday, the 1st of June. And highlight a few horses, hopefully to follow on their next few starts. The other side, of course, is then using the times and the sectionals and what the horses have done on the track, I suppose, to try and predict the future and how well and how good they may be and how classy they may be. That's a side of the game which I haven't immersed in at all, really. And clearly, there are many better judges and people who have experts and have done well, spent their lifetime on such things. Really, the likes of Simon Rowlands and others. And I believe a lot of his criteria and stats and figures and everything are what underpin ATR's sectional information. This probably won't be a short video just because that isn't the nature of the beast. You can't cut corners with these things. So for those of you who like to indulge in something a bit different, maybe put the kettle on, make a cup of tea, maybe get a notepad out, your trackers out. Hopefully you'll find it interesting. Like I said, I am kind of learning as I go along with some of this timings stuff. And I may say things which are complete nonsense. That isn't impossible. They'll make logical sense in my head. Whether or not it's actually correct or not, we shall see. For those of you who are watching this who will be far more on top of well, on the ball and on top of things when it comes to sectional times, etc. Obviously, do post in the comments below any thoughts, areas of improvement, etc. are always welcome. So what am I going to start with? I'm going to jump around a bit. I'm over to Gigi's here. I'm looking at the results. And what are we going to do? The recent results from Monday, the 1st of June, which was obviously Newcastle. I will, I'm not going to go through every race, although maybe I will near enough. What did I first thing I want to say? There's nothing on the first race I want to say from a kind of sectional point of view, etc. Bar Stonemason, who I will just mention because he was a hot form horse to follow. He seemed to be a talking horse. One of the Dixon brothers gave a stable preview or an owner's preview in the Sporting Life, and I should think that's contributed to some of their horses being put in at much shorter prices than they should be. This one was backed early. I doubt it was owner's money and then drifted out a bit. The trainer said before the race, actually I read a quote in the Racing Post after the race when I was reading it in the evening, which said he thought he'd need the run. Ali Rawlinson got off after the race and wasn't 100% sure. He thought, well, I wasn't sure there was a niggle, but again, he faded again late in the piece, which he's done a few times. But if he did run, I think, like he needed it. I've no doubt he's chucked in off this mark, given this hot form race in particular here from Newbury. It's just about whether they find the key. It was their first run for the yard and new connections, having gotten from Roger Charlton. Maybe he'll be much better on turf. And he's meant to have developed a bit over the winter. He's a pivotal. They think he's taken time to develop. But anyway, that's that. let's move on to something a bit more interesting, hopefully. This is at theraces.com/sectionals info, which you can read yourself. I've kind of indulged a little bit. It explains some of the things I'm going to show in terms of color coding, pace analysis bar, uh, the sectional timings grid, and various other things. And I've read that through a couple of times. I probably need to read it through a couple of times more. If I go to results within at the races, and of course this is a good website with plenty of quality free content on. I want results from the 1st of June. And we are Newcastle, which obviously has the sectional times. I forget the number of tracks, I think there's 12 or so which have this timing system. And I just want to go by race really. 1 o'clock wasn't one I wanted to touch on. There wasn't anything really from this race. I suppose you're looking at sectional times here just to get a feel. This indicates they went fast early. The red boxes indicate they went fast early, and then you can kind of see the codes down here for the colours, showing you whether they went fast and optimum, even to fast, even to slow, slow. So kind of green to blue would indicate they slowed it down. In any case, these two are kind of the front rank all the way. And yeah, they're a front rank all the way. Is there anything else I want to say really? You get these efficiency scores. You've got this energy distribution chart, which I'll use a bit. So the orange line is indicating based on historical figures. So yeah, you've got this energy distribution chart, like I was saying. Yeah, so the yellow bar is kind of what you would expect, but yeah, based on historical figures and different things. And the blue line is what the horse actually achieves. You can kind of see how how their energy was distributed and whether they raced in an efficient way. You can kind of get an idea on how the race panned out. You get this race finish percentage, and I suppose the figure that the higher it is above that suggests that it kind of turned into a bit of a dash, and it may have been generally slower or not evenly run throughout. So if you're a lot higher than that race finish percentage, that's what that would suggest. If you're a lot lower than that, I think that suggests, well, it does, that the early pace was frenetic and fast, and everything collapsed in a hole. There's not really anything from this race I wanted to take out as such, other than just to say those things I did. Of more interest, I think, will be this race, Eddrach. You can see here the race finish percentage. Yeah, sorry, what I should have said. I mean, 100% is ideal. So if you bang on around 100%, I think it possibly differs for different courses and whatever calculations. But as a rough kind of guide, 100% would suggest the race was run in total efficiency. In terms of the race finishing percentage, and if it goes miles over 100%, it's suggesting the race turned into a dash and it may have been slowly run in the middle or early on. If it comes under 100%, it would suggest they went really fast early and then fell in a hole. And you can try and use that, I suppose, to work out which horses may be worth following or not. Here we have an example of a race that was very slowly run. And the early pace was slow. You can kind of pick that up by watching the replay, but when you're looking at figures and dashboards like this, I think it really does help bring that to life. So yeah, you can see here with Eddrach, I mean, you can see the ideal energy distributions, this yellow line, and everything kind of was way under it early on. So slow, fast. And the race finishing percentage indicates that as well. As you can see, the efficiency grade A being the best, I assume, and this is an F. So this kind of turned into a really slow and then a dash. So of course this would have benefited those horses racing nearer the front and that had a turn of foot, in my mind, and therefore we may want to look at horses that may have still ran well, but when the pace picked up were outpaced, and may have been poorly positioned further back from off the pace. if I look at the sectional times, just so you can get a kind of feel per furlong sectional of just how slow they went, Blazing Hot was always kind of near the front, but didn't lack the turn of gears that the winner did. And you can see the kind of speeds they did relative to their others for those furlong splits near the end. The horse I'm interested in is Bond's Boy, who was 2.5 lengths behind Blazing Hot, but he ran at the front from near the start, and Bond's Boy was near the rear, and just couldn't pick up really. You can see his 3 to second furlong split was actually quicker than the two in front, as was well, all these times actually in terms of from the second. So he was much slower than the second in the first furlong, and then was quicker for the next three, before then not being as quick again at the end. So it kind of helps give you a feel. And Bond's Boy was in touch towards rear, and if you watch the replay, which I won't do for this race, but feel free to do it yourself obviously, you can see that he was visibly outpaced, and that he was possibly poorly positioned or simply not quick enough. And certainly didn't have the change of gears that the winner had. He was well fancied. You then need to put some context on and then look at the horse's form, I suppose, and work out whether it's something we might want to keep an eye on. He may not be missed next time, but he knows how to win. His efforts, he kind of came under the pump and then stayed on and kept on. He ran third in a decent sales race at Newmarket. You can see that it's worked out fairly well. I mean, you know, as I've said before, I like these kind of hot form and the then what future form elements of GG's. You can see the horse in front of him, Mild Illusion, for Johnny Portman. She went and won a listed fillies race. I think that was off 90. So, you know, some hope. And the winner of that, I think, came into it with a rating of 105. So that would give some hope that 86 may underestimate them, and of course may give something to rate the Appleby horse around and the horse in front of him in this race. Was his first run of the season, like I said, outpaced. He either needs a much stronger pace to aim at, or he's going to be better when stepped up to 7 furlongs or so. I think he's looking well handicapped. He already has a mark there. The new rules, aren't they? Given the season we've had, some of these horses have got marks after just 2 runs. And interesting, they decided to bring him back in a novice. So maybe Fahy's got his eye on some kind of big field cavalry charge, well, relatively big field for this season, or a decent kind of handicap pot Bond's Boy may have in him. You can see by his relations to a few stayers also, and maybe 6 furlongs is the minimum he wants, or he would have definitely preferred a much stronger pace and maybe would have been closer for it. Where I need to develop my skills, I suppose, is what this kind of race and performance and that slow pace, then a kick and a sprint, what that tells us about the likes of the winner. I mean, he's not going to be missed next time, is he, given that performance? But that ability to quicken off a slow pace and have a change of gears is obviously useful to know moving forward, especially if he may be in races, other races which also look like they may have a slow pace on paper. But it also could be that he would have done and will do even better in the future if he has a more efficient, a faster run race and in theory a more efficient ride. But given the pace they went, it was obviously a decent ride and the jockey knew what he had in terms of a change of gears. But where that race is kind of more kind of run at faster fractions through the whole race, he may be seen to even better effect. But yeah, what that kind of means for him moving forward, that's the kind of thinking that I can develop. But of course, he's going to be a last time out winner who bolted up, and you wouldn't have thought he'll be massive price next time. Maybe he will, but anyway, that's still useful information for whatever race he may rock up in. But I think from this, Bond's Boy is the one, is the only one of the top 4. He did best of those that were kind of held up off the pace. He was held up off the pace and then struggled when it picked up simply because he didn't have the gears or change of pace, I think, indicating that he wanted a stronger pace or wants further, and he'll probably be sharper for his next start anyway. So that's an interesting one on that. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. Art Power I won't really touch on. An impressive performance, front rank all the way, and kind of an efficiently run race. If you look at the times and compare that to the Appleby horse, I think it's about half a second per 3 lengths, isn't it, on the flat? And I think it's yeah, this was about a 9 length quicker performance, if not a shade more, I think, from my maths. But he received a great ride from Sylvester. I suppose we know Sylvester is brilliant on the front, and as he was here, and he kind of, there was a slower part, it kind of dictated it very fast at the beginning, then slowed it down a bit, and then kind of even fractions really. um, you can see here actually slower in the middle part and then quicker. You can see the race finishing speed is near kind of 100%. You can see the miles per hour slow in the middle, fast near the end. That's just interesting information really. Again, there'll be people, and the part of the game for me to develop is maybe what those times and how they may compare to others and various different things which may indicate just how good he could be. I know the trainer thinks he's got a stakes horse in the making. There's stride data as well, which I haven't even got anywhere near to touching, and won't necessarily as yet. You can of course overcomplicate the game as much as you want, but I think certainly from an eye catcher perspective and trying to understand how races were run other than just visual impression, is of course important and useful. Um, I'm moving on to the 320. Yes, this is kind of the next horse I want to mention. If I go on the result, it's True Blue Moon for Tim Easterby. I've kind of, when I go through these, I have some focus on my 15 trainers in the Trainer Profiles 2020, the flat report, which have all had access to. So I'm kind of looking at those 15 trainers, of which Tim Easterby is one, because I know this horse may appear on my radar in the future, and it's good to have some context and information. This was his first start since leaving Joseph O'Brien's. I forget what they paid for him, 14,000 or so, possibly at the sales. Holy Roman Emperor is the sire of my Blessed to Impress, so I had shares in for a couple of years, and she's a kind of dogged little class 5, class 6 machine. They do tend to put their head down and try, which their sire did if you watch his kind of 2,000 guineas second back. A lot of them do have a good attitude. This one won a handicap off 87 in Ireland. He's off 84 here. When you watch this replay, which I'll do in a minute, he was sent off 33s here, suggesting he kind of wasn't there to feature. You can look through the sectionals here. The race finished 98.73, horse finishing speed 100.9. Generally an efficiently run race, as you can see here. They kind of went fast early. Brian the Snail was kind of in touch. You can see just look at the blue lines and the yellow. Slowed down in the middle bit here. When you're getting these lighter colors, don't forget you've got this guide here, so the green to blue kind of slowing down, slower than optimum for an efficient energy distribution through the race. And you can see that here, so kind of fast early, quick a bit, and then you can see that in visual impression on this graph in front of you, where that blue line dips below that yellow little bump. So when thinking about all of that, fast early pace, slower there, fairly efficiently run, you're getting close to 100%, certainly nothing like that Eddrart performance and race. So I'm trying to look then at kind of who's done well from further back, and if I just click on these sectional times here, you get these little kind of indications of who was at the front, who was at the rear. You can see True Blue Moon. So you've got the front three kind of in the latter half of the race are kind of all near the front to a degree. No surprise there, kind of then slows up and then they kick again. And some of these finishing speeds are kind of a bit quicker, yeah, indicating that kind of fast, slower, slow, or even, slow, and then fast again. So it wasn't really evenly run. You kind of needed to be well positioned, as it turned out. And True Blue Moon, from the 3 furlong to the 2 furlong, when it was slowing down, was still in the rear. And then he was still in the rear here. But if you look at the times, Obviously slower in the first part, a bit quicker there, slower there, similar. You know, his times aren't massively different in terms of the split, certainly not this slow one. He was quicker in that 3 furlong to 2 furlong out in the eventual winner, but he was still in the rear. So of course he was never really going to have a chance from the position that he was in. Now you need to have some you need to look at that information while watching the replay, and I'll just pause the video a second. Yeah, so I keep having to kind of pause the video and stuff whenever kind of potential background noise may appear with other people in my house. So if it's a bit jumpy at times, that's why I kind of pause it and then start again. I've just put this video on mute so we can just watch it. It'd be quite good to remember where True Blue Moon is drawn in stall number 8. Let me just find that again. There we go. So stall number 8 here. If you kind of play that through, you kind of now know about those sectionals. So it was kind of fast early, and when you're watching these kind of things, it's hard to get a grip on that actually without those times. You watching this, are they going quick, are they going slow? So the first kind of couple of furlongs, or first furlong or so, was quickish, then more even, and they slowed it down in the middle bit before then quickening again near the end. And you can see here True Blue Moon's there, he's being niggled a little bit. Maybe you kind of can't keep up. So yeah, so they're starting to speed up. He's being niggled here. He also, so he's further back than ideal. You can see Brian the Snail here traveling fairly comfortably, and at this point, as it starts to quicken up, he's got shuffled back. The jockey's kind of putting in some sort of effort. He then keeps running up a cul-de-sac. You can see as he stops riding, he keeps running into the back of the horse. Then he's at the rear as it really starts to quicken again in the final furlong. They're really starting to motor now. Brian the Snail picks up well, but he got shuffled back, found trouble at completely the wrong point, and then he just stays on under hands and heels, as you can see. That's probably one of those eye catchers with the might end up being obvious enough. But I just don't think, well, the market would suggest he wasn't there to get competitive. But as the race was run, especially as it started to slow down and then speed up, he was in completely the wrong position. Partly that's because he was running into the back of horses and finding trouble. But still, I thought, given his profile, I thought given his profile, you know, like I said, when you hear me in other videos, I generally want to focus on unexposed horses, or horses who still may be open to improvement. It can be those that have had a few runs like he has, but new trainers can get improvement out of horses, obviously. You know, 5-year-olds or age 5 is generally on the flat, when some argue that horses kind of reach full maturity kind of age 5. So there could be more to come from him, and to me that suggests that he's got races in him, that particular run. I think 6 furlongs probably his trip. He was run over 5 furlongs a bit by Joseph. It could be in time, and as he's got older that he wants further. I just think he may want a truer pace to aim at, possibly. And of course, he might want a more prominent ride, although they've always kind of, old past connections, always used to ride impatiently also. So it could be he's that kind of unlucky type, hold up type, and is kind of the sort for each way purposes, because of their running style, and there'll be a few frustrating rides. If he'd have got a clean run, and they'd have gone harder from the kind of middle part of the race rather than slowing down and sprinting, I suspect he would have finished much closer than he did. That's the thinking there, I think. Whether or not he's another that might actually now want stepping up to 7, or he just does need a stronger pace, or wants returning to turf, and or all of those things I've just said. But there are reasons there, to my eyes, why that run was better than it appears on paper, and he did best of those that came from the back. He hit trouble in running, and he hit trouble in running and found himself in the wrong place at the wrong time, I think, as the race was quickening up. that's what the sectionals tell us. That's what, if I just watched the video, I could have maybe mused that and guessed that without knowing fully. But when you look at the data and that kind of thing, that's what that shows you. GG's, I think, uses all the same stats from the same company behind ATR, possibly, or however that works. But you can see some of the speeds and dig into the results and get some of these same graphs and information up. But I'm using ATR for now. Mainly, I quite like the color coding and some of this stuff. And my simple brain, as an introduction to sectionals and things, can kind of see what's going on with this particular dashboard in front of me. And of course it's free to use for everyone. So I think that's what I want to say about True Blue Moon. I think I'll just end up repeating myself, but I would be surprised if Mr. Easterby doesn't get a few wins out of him. What his ideal conditions are going to be still remains to be seen, but he will have races run more to suit, I think, moving forwards. And maybe a more aggressive ride. He was sent off a price which suggested he was there just for the run, but I think they've got something to work with there. As I rattle on to the 355, this is an interesting one. What I wanted to highlight about this one, and I'm ticking under 26 minutes, is that I'm just thinking here, sorry. Yeah, the top two are kind of prominent all the way, and I'm not going to really focus on them. Shoot to Kill for George Scott, who's one of my trainers, 15 trainers from the trainer profiles. When you watch this, yeah, they went fast early. It's the middle part of the race that interests me. You can see here that his miles per hour and other things when I look on the sectionals. He seemed to race inefficiently, so he went quicker than he was ideal. That blue line above that yellow, which hopefully you can see in the middle part of the race, he went quicker than ideal. And that meant that by the kind of final few furlongs, he just faded a bit, as you can see there, the yellow line, blue line diving below the yellow. That may indicate that he wants further. He may have come on for the run. But I think he didn't get the most efficient ride, and I'll just flick to the replay and we can probably see that in action. So I've got the replay up here.
And they're going 6 furlongs
And
with the
Shoot
Betway
to Kill
Casino
is here
handicap. Barbarella
in
jumped
similar
well from the
colours
stalls in
actually
the
to
centre. Oakenshield
Matt's
is away to
GG
the far
Syndicate, but it's
side.
not.
Written
Another owner.
Broadcast is running
And
prominently.
you can
Shoot to
see
Kill,
him
red
racing
sleeves
here,
just
so I've
off
got the
the lead.
sound on, haven't I? Well, I'll just mute that there. The winner's here near the front. The second here is near the front. I can look back at the sectionals in a minute to try and get a judge on those, but it's that middle part of the race whereby he seems to over race, and that's here, I think. So yeah, if I pause this here, he goes past the eventual winner, and maybe for this horse that was inefficient for him. He's using up a lot of energy here. Atzini's keeping tabs on his a bit. I mean, he's probably got the classiest and best horse on the day anyway. But in that middle bit here, and the jockey still hasn't going for him. He's possibly racing out of his comfort zone, and he nearly hits the front there. And then he fades. Whether or not he needed the run, if the jockey had held on to him a bit more in that middle phase that I've just focused on, does that mean he'd have finished his race off a bit better? Maybe it's just not in the same league as these two. You can overthink these things, obviously. Possibly is a galloping sort that wants further, and it was a bit of a fact-finding mission, and/or he also needed the run. But I just wanted to highlight that, just so that was more a way of seeing putting the replay against what we're seeing with the numbers here, and you could see that play out as they went through the race. He is a horse. Where are we? The 320 wasn't that one, was it? 355. Shoot to Kill, a 3-year-old for George Scott. Yeah, fast even, then he kind of went slow, as you could see there. He is unexposed. I think the trainer's got a quote in my Mark Howard's ahead on the flat. No, he doesn't. He's not in there. I think his Sporting Life Stable tour highlighted him. He thinks his world handicap hasn't quite clicked. He ran there as if he's worth back worth a go over 7 furlongs to my eyes. He did look a kind of galloping sort, but he did kind of do a bit too much in that section as I just showed you. But in the end, he was well stuffed and probably ran as if he needed it. His mark may drop down again a couple of pounds. He has hit a decent RPR of 77 before. Some of his races have worked out pretty well. I mean, that Mum's Tipple race has thrown up a few winners and was obviously classy. The fact he was kind of put into those kind of races would suggest he's got something under the bonnet. It's just a question of when they find the key. But yeah, maybe 7 furlongs where you can just sit on him a bit longer and you can just travel into the race and then gallop might be the way forward. I don't know. So that's some interesting thoughts on him. If you watch that replay again, I'll tick round a half an hour, but hopefully I'm saying some stuff of interest. As you tick round to, if you watch that replay again, you can see Rock of Diamonds, who you can clearly see was well stuffed. But in that race, if you look at the sectionals, they kind of went fast. So yeah, early pace fast, a lot of red here. You can see those red sectionals here. Rock of Diamonds just could never seem to go the pace. And he always seemed to be a bit on the back foot and under the pump. He started his career over 7. He's returned over 6 here. I think he ran as if he was always, he may not have enjoyed the track, but it looked to me like he could do with stepping up in trip, I think. He was always out of his comfort zone there when you watch it. He couldn't handle that early fractions. Well, he was never really going yard in truth. So maybe it was partly the track. Maybe he's just a bit rusty. I don't know. But I thought that was of some interest also. And I think kind of in horses to follow or eyes on, that was kind of it. Bonds Boy, True Blue Moon, and Shoot to Kill were the kind of 3 I wanted to focus on. You can look at the 4:30 if anyone's interested. I'll keep talking through some of these other races because there's some things of interest. If I look at the sectional tools here, this was an efficient ride. So what I wanted to say, this, apologies if you can hear some kind of background noise. There's activity in the garden. Hopefully you can hear me still. When you watch this, the first thing I want to say, Lewis Edmonds clearly, who's the jockey of Queen of Kalahari, clearly knows how to judge the pace. This was a fairly race efficiency was pretty efficient on the race finishing speeds, tracking that yellow line to a bit, although you can see then slowed down a little bit in the middle, but a decent performance really, and a decent ride from the front. He got the fractions spot on, won by a neck. I suppose the fact that he was right at the front, the second was right tracking leaders, the third was towards the rear, and then picked up speed and then dropped a bit. So that might be an interesting one, possibly poorly positioned. The other thing of interest was Be Proud, who was well fancied and actually could be argued should have won. He started really slowly and didn't have the clearest of runs, but if you look at the sectional times, by section, by furlong, he was in the rear at the start. Queen of Kalahari gets out, runs the first furlong in 13.71. He's in 14.30. That's got what, 0.6 of a second, more than 3 lengths. He's towards the rear. He's already 3 lengths off the eventual winner, who then gets an efficient ride pretty much. But then if you look at the times, his second furlong, 4 to 3 out, was quicker. This furlong was quicker. This was the same, and this was the same. So that just indicates for Be Proud how that start, that kind of sleepy start when you watch the replay, and then not getting a run, he ran as efficiently as the eventual winner, but he was beaten, and the jockey actually eases off, but is gentle on him. He was a short price. He was fancied for one. He never normally, well, in fairness, Danny's been aggressive on him before, so maybe it's just tactics. If he had had the start of Queen of Kalahari and had been up alongside that winner, he clearly had the ability to run the same fractions. That may have been some head bobbing finish between the front 4 or 5. But as you get in these sprint handicaps, I just thought that was something of interest, I suppose, as I'm trying to educate myself as I go along. There will no doubt various other things you can pick up from those sectionals. The thing I wanted to highlight here as I focus on two more horses, I think. This is about that idea of looking forward and trying to work out, is the horse going to be any good? Alignac of, or however you say his name, of Sir Michael Stoute, I don't think should have been able to do what he did. Very fast start, slow pedestrian in the middle, and then a sprint finish at the end, which is fine if you're near the front, which the second and third were ideally in kind of an ideal position when it slowed down. Sir Michael Stoute was at the rear. He was at the rear when the race was slowing down and there was no pace, and then he just kind of flashed home. Look at that blue line, just indicates how slow they went through the middle, but then the turbos at the end, a very inefficient way to race. But because of his finishing speed against the overall total, to do that from the rear, and I think that the flame indicates a positive in terms of that finishing speed, being his finishing speed percentage being higher than the kind of race finishing speed, however they calculate that. There's information on that somewhere on the website. I can't quite remember just now. But he shouldn't have been able to do that, I don't think. So to be able to do that from the rear in a handicap obviously indicates he's a classy horse. He obviously had plenty in hand, and you can watch the replay and that brings this to life, this kind of how the race was run. I just found that interesting, and it would indicate he's well ahead of his mark. If he got a more efficient ride and a quicker, and they went harder in the middle, he may have done even better. But he had a change of gears. I don't know whether that indicates he might be able to do even better over kind of 1 mile 6, even further, because he could probably do that middle kind of distribution slow pace for as long as he wanted. So they weren't really going very quick, as you can see. But yeah, to do that from where he did, I don't think he should have been. When you get the kind of Tim Easterby horse, who was also impressive, but he did that from the front and quickened up. This one has quickened up off a very moderate pace from right near the back. I think I'm correct in saying that would indicate he was classy. He's not going to go under the radar, but whether, I'm interested just to track him moving forwards to see what he could progress into as kind of learning, I suppose, for the future when looking at how this race was run and how he performed, and whether that's some indication of kind of latent class and ability. And it'll be interesting to see how high he can go for Michael Stoute. He could be kind of a Ascot handicapper, maybe, depending on what they do with his mark, or maybe he is a kind of listed or group horse in time. We shall see. What else do I want to focus on? Nothing really on this one as such. Again, that was kind of in touch headway. Again, this was fast, slow, then fast at the end, and there might be things you can read into looking at that kind of performance. But it was a decent win from the winner. This is similar to the Stout horse, and it's just the one I want to focus on. Again, she or he, probably is he, 100% sure. But again, his finishing speed, or hers, hold on. Sorry, yeah, he is a he, Frankel Colt, and Frank was building up a decent record on the Newcastle surface. But again, very inefficient way to race. Fast early, very slow in the middle, sprinting at the end. But whereas Wise Glory had all the ace cards, fast, able to slow it down right on the end and then sprint, the eventual winner came from behind, came from further back, dwelt towards rear, and you can watch the replay again. But again, that ability, he raced very inefficiently, but to still do that and have the turbocharge on, when the second was able to quicken from the front, but he's had to quicken from the back, and then still had enough in touch in order to kind of go on, possibly marks him down as an exciting horse of the future as well. Again, those two probably won't be missed, obviously. They're last time out winners anyway, and this kind of information is becoming more more mainstream is the word I'm looking for. But I just thought it was interesting and just something to note, really, when trying to look at how these races were run. Zoran may have, he was a Hugo Palmer horse, wasn't he? He qualified on one of the Newcastle Sires angles. I suspect he may have just bumped into 3 very good other Newmarket trained horses. He should now get a handicap mark after this. and yeah, I just don't think he was necessarily good enough, and may well come on for the run, but it may transpire the three in front were decent anyway. But possibly the winner is the one to take out of that. So I'm ticking around to 40 minutes. That's all I wanted to say in this video. Like I say, I'm learning as I go along with a load of those things. There'll be things I've probably said which aren't correct. There'll be things I've completely missed. But hopefully on that particular journey, looking at ICATs and thinking about races in that way, that kind of thinking may help kind of add another level to the eye catcher side. So I hope you found that interesting to a point. Do post a comment if you did, or if you didn't, or if you've got any questions or any other of your own observations, would be great. And with that said, yeah, I will stop recording now and be back at some point in the future. This is Josh saying bye for now.